Welcome to Sherlock Shadow Channel, where every story hides a secret. Grab your coffee, sit back, and dive into a world of twists and turns. Tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city and country in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share the thrill with fellow mystery lovers. Let the adventure begin. Hercule Poirot and the Mystery of the Missing Mapmaker. Chapter 1. The Vanished Cartographer. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall, mullioned windows of Pendleton Hall, casting long golden shafts across the polished marble floor. In the grand vestibule, beneath an imposing coat of arms, lay the body of Mr. Reginald Mapplethorpe, celebrated cartographer to His Majesty's Geographical Society. A crimson stain spread across his crisp linen collar, and in his clenched hand he held nothing but emptiness. The precious map he had been safeguarding was gone. Whispers rose like smoke among the assembled servants. Lady Penelope Pendleton, the mistress of the house, stood rigid as a statue, her gloved hands pressed against her perfectly coiffed hair. She had summoned Hercule Poirot only this morning, after discovering that her family's heirloom, a chart reputed to guide the way to a hidden trove in the High Atlas, had gone missing from her locked study. Now, her personal envoy lay dead at her feet. "Mon Dieu!" cried Poirot, stepping lightly over the threshold. He paused, taking in the scene with darting little black eyes. His moustache twitched as he surveyed the tableau, the gleaming parquet, the shattered vase by the door, and the single set of muddy footprints leading away toward the grand staircase. Beside him stood Inspector Jameson of Scotland Yard, notebook in hand, his brow furrowed. "Madam," Poirot said, inclining his head with impeccable courtesy. "May I have a word?" Lady Penelope's voice trembled, though she strove for composure. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. I can scarcely believe this has happened in my home." "I understand entirely. Pray tell me what you discovered upon entering this hall." She swallowed. "I returned from the library. The front door was locked, the study door likewise. Reginald was to deliver the map to me tonight during our small dinner, but I found him here, sir, just moments ago." Poirot's gaze flicked to the study door, its brass knob gleaming innocently. "And this door, you say, was locked when you left?" "Locked and bolted," Lady Penelope confirmed. "I have confirmation from Mr. Groves, my valet. He saw me lock it." Inspector Jameson glanced at Poirot. "Locked room murder, eh, monsieur?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Mais oui, but not impossible. One must simply observe the clues. Monsieur Mapplethorpe was a man of routine. He came here each afternoon, locked away to examine the map. When he emerged, the heirloom was returned to your safe." He knelt, inspecting the footprints. "Notice, n'est-ce pas, the irregular spacing? The murderer ran but stumbled on the threshold." He traced the prints with a slender finger. "Also, mud from the garden. Recently watered, I believe." A soft murmur went through the onlookers. Inspector Jameson asked, "Garden, sir?" Poirot rose, brushing imaginary lint from his waistcoat. "Indeed. The back path is near the east wing, but more pressing, the missing map. It cannot have vanished completely. The door shows no sign of forced entry, yet the lock is intact. The precious document must be concealed or carried away." Lady Penelope's cheeks were pale. "We must find it at once." "Patience, madam. We shall locate both culprit and map in due course. But first, I require the company of every person present in this household at the time of the murder." He raised a gloved hand. "Madam, I beg you to assemble your staff and family in the dining room immediately. And, Inspector, kindly secure Pendleton Hall. No one enters or leaves without my permission." As the household dispersed in shocked obedience, Poirot turned to Jameson. "The map is central. It holds the motive. Someone covets what it reveals. Tell me, Inspector, who among these people would benefit from its secrets?" Jameson shook his head. The only evidently interested party was Lady Penelope herself. But the map, if genuine, should yield her nothing but historical vanity. Poirot folded his arms, highly amused. "Ah, but vanity is a powerful flame, no? Yet I suspect something more. Greed, perhaps, or revenge. We shall unravel the threads, Inspector." He paused at the threshold. "Madam," he added, voice soft but firm, "pray, do not agitate your guests. Let us maintain calm until I have spoken with each in turn." Lady Penelope inclined her head with trembling dignity. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. Whatever you need, at once." Poirot offered a small, reassuring smile. "I thank you. And now, for the first step, I must examine Mr. Mapplethorpe's study. There lie the seeds of our mystery." He stepped past the fallen body into the study. The inspector followed, stifling a grimace. Behind them, the great oak doors closed, sealing in the solemn hush. Outside, the gardens glistened with dew. Somewhere among these whispering hedges, the truth waited to be uncovered, layer upon layer, hidden beneath the footprints of a desperate mind. And Hercule Poirot, with every tremor of his moustache, was ready to begin. Chapter 2. A Table of Secrets. The great dining room of Pendleton Hall felt cavernous under the glare of crystal chandeliers, their light refracted into trembling patterns on the polished mahogany table. At one end sat Lady Penelope Pendleton, her cool composure restored behind an artful mask of refinement. Opposite her, Inspector Jameson took a seat, pen poised above his notebook. Between them, 12 figures arranged themselves like a gallery of portraits come to life, each bearing an expression as carefully arranged as the china before them. Hercule Poirot entered last, his gait measured, moustache impeccably groomed. He paused at the threshold, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Mes amis," he announced, his voice both gentle and commanding, "thank you for gathering at my request. It is imperative that we speak with each of you, in the spirit of calm inquiry." A ripple of nervous energy passed through the assembled company. On Lady Penelope's right, her younger brother, Lord Gerald Pendleton, drummed his long fingers against the tabletop. His tailored waistcoat was immaculate, but his pallor hinted at a man accustomed to stress. Next to him sat Miss Alice Groves, the valet's daughter, whose quiet demeanour belied the sharp intelligence in her dark eyes. Across from her, Colonel Sir Rupert Halifax leaned back, his silver hair and military bearing suggesting a lifetime of command. Beside the colonel, Dr. Eleanor Faraday, family physician, folded her gloved hands and offered Poirot a polite nod. Poirot motioned toward Lord Gerald. "Monsieur Pendleton, perhaps you can begin. You were in the library when the crime occurred." Gerald frowned. "Indeed, monsieur. I was reading a dispatch concerning the newly charted coast of Labrador. I heard nothing, no shout, no sound of footsteps. When I emerged, I found Alice at the door, pale as a ghost." Alice Groves spoke then, her voice soft but firm. "I came to deliver tea to Mr. Mapplethorpe in the study. When I found the door locked and heard nothing, I panicked. By the time I alerted Lady Penelope," her voice trailed off, eyes downcast. Poirot tapped his finger on his palm. "You heard no struggle?" "No, monsieur." "Very well." He turned to Colonel Halifax. The colonel set aside a polished walking cane, clearing his throat. "I had been inspecting the West Wing corridor for the new lighting fixtures. I noticed the study window ajar. Quite odd, in my opinion. He raised an eyebrow. But I assumed Mr. Mapplethorpe preferred the breeze. Inspector Jameson scribbled swiftly. Poirot observed Halifax's steady gaze. And you? No peculiarity in his behavior that afternoon. The Colonel shrugged. He was always fastidious, almost to a fault. I recall that he frowned when I inadvertently tracked dust onto the rug. Aside from that, nothing. Dr. Faraday came next, her manner calm. I was attending the ailing gardener in the east courtyard. His ankle was sprained. When I returned, I learned of the tragedy. She paused, then added quietly, Mr. Mapplethorpe seemed in good health when I examined him last week, though he complained of a persistent headache. Poirot steepled his fingers. Headache, you say? Not uncommon, perhaps. Nevertheless, thank you. One by one, each member of the household recounted their whereabouts. Mrs. Lydia Groves, the housekeeper, polishing the silver. Mr. Edward Belford, Lady Penelope's solicitor, reviewing legal papers in his private chamber. Miss Celia Montague, the eccentric cousin, sketching floral studies in the conservatory, and the butler, Mr. Thomas Aldridge, overseeing the valet's duties in the servants' quarters. At each account, Poirot listened with rapt attention, interjecting only to clarify minor discrepancies. A clock that struck earlier than expected, a corridor door found ajar but quickly closed, faint footprints that seemed to vanish beneath the rug's edge. Finally he stood and surveyed the hush that had fallen. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, voice carrying across the table. We are confronted with a death most perplexing. The map is missing. The door was locked. No one saw the perpetrator slip away. Yet the window, yes, Colonel, you observed it open, offers us a clue. How came this map into physical form in his hands only to vanish upon his death? Lady Penelope's eyes glistened. What do you propose, Monsieur Poirot? He tapped the table with a slender finger. I propose that the map is not the object of theft alone, but a symbol of deeper motive. Someone among us believed the map's revelation more valuable than a man's life. Perhaps the map's contents threatened to expose a secret no one wished known. A silence heavier than the tablecloth settled. Inspector Jameson leaned forward. A secret, you say? Oui, and to uncover it I must examine the map itself, or at least the study in its entirety. Poirot touched his lapel. But before that I require certain items. The gardener's report on the window's lock, any correspondence Mr. Mapplethorpe received regarding this chart, and a list of those who entered the study in recent days. While these are compiled, I shall listen further to your impressions. Every nuance may hold significance. As the servants rose to attend to his request, the guests exchanged furtive glances. The hush broke, replaced by low murmurings. Yet through it all, Poirot sat serenely, moustache quivering with anticipation. In that moment, the true game began, the interplay of lies, half-truths, and hidden desires. And only Hercule Poirot, drawing upon his little grey cells, would guide them toward the ultimate revelation. Chapter 3. Shadows Behind the Glass. Monsieur Poirot rose from the dining table, adjusting the silk of his cravat. If you will excuse me, madame, I must return to the scene of the crime. There reside the whispers of our mystery. He swept from the room with Inspector Jameson and Lady Penelope close behind. The heavy oak doors swung shut, leaving the assembled guests to their uneasy speculations. The study was exactly as Poirot had left it. The leather armchair stained with dried blood, the small pedestal table overturned, and the window, its frame still slick with fresh dew, yawning onto the rose garden beyond. Poirot stepped forward, examining the sill with a jeweller's eye. "Note, Inspector," he murmured, "that the latch is not broken. It was opened, then closed again, perhaps by small hands or delicate gloves." Jameson crouched and inspected. "I see, sir. The latch is slightly ajar, but unforced." "Precisely. One could enter unnoticed, provided one knew the precise angle." Poirot stood and moved to the overturned pedestal. The slender inkwell that had been on its surface lay cracked on the floor. He picked up a fragment, examining the fresh blue ink that bubbled at the rim. Violent struggle, yes, but brief. He laid the piece on the desk. He did not cry out. Lady Penelope bit her lip. Then someone struck swiftly before any alarm. "Exactly, madame. And note," Poirot tapped a section of the rug, "the edge here is slightly raised. A small object was hidden beneath, perhaps removed by the murderer in haste." He knelt to gently lift the rug's fringe, revealing a shallow compartment carved into the floor. Within lay a single scrap of parchment, its edges browned with age. Poirot gingerly pried it free. As he unfolded the fragment, his moustache bristled. Mon Dieu, a ciphered note. He pressed a finger to the curling script. This is from Mr. Mapplethorpe's own hand. He must have feared discovery. Inspector Jameson peered over his shoulder. "A cipher, you say? Have you seen such handwriting before?" Poirot's brows drew together. Indeed. He was known to record private observations in code, fearing spies of the academic world. But this is different. He refolded the parchment and placed it in an envelope. "I shall have it transcribed. For now, we know Mr. Mapplethorpe anticipated danger." He rose, brushing dust from his trousers. "Now, madame, tell me of this garden. The colonel mentioned a window opening toward the east. Who tended those roses today?" Lady Penelope replied, "Our gardener, Mr. Whitcomb. He was ill, but returned briefly to check the new bulb planting. Dr. Faraday attended him in the courtyard." "Ah, the gardener's limp, observed, yes?" Poirot nodded to Inspector Jameson. "We must speak with Mr. Whitcomb at once." Turning to Jameson, he instructed, "Fetch Dr. Faraday and the Grove's ledger of attendance. I wish to know the precise moments each servant left and entered the grounds." While Jameson hurried off, Poirot paused by the mahogany desk. He ran his finger along the carved initials PM, observing the fine craftsmanship. "This desk was a gift from Lady Penelope, I believe?" Lady Penelope nodded. "Yes, he received it last Christmas. And yet, he hid nothing of importance in its drawers?" Poirot opened each, revealing only paperweights and correspondence. In the bottommost drawer, he discovered a small sealed packet addressed to G.R.H., letters matching those of Colonel Rupert Halifax. He handed it gently to Lady Penelope. "Madame, did you know your housekeeper delivered the post today?" She glanced at the packet, puzzled. "Yes. Mr. Belford sorted the mail. This should have gone to the Colonel's quarters." Poirot's lips curved. "Perhaps our Colonel received correspondence of his own interest. We shall note this for later." He placed the packet in his coat pocket. "Now, I wish to observe the garden." Moments later they emerged through the window onto the dew-kissed rosebeds. The air carried the faint scent of raspberry and earth. Poirot knelt by a single rose bush nearest the window. The blossoms were undisturbed, but at its base lay a small silver key, tiny enough to fit a pocket watch. He picked it up and held it aloft. "Mystifying, no? This key is neither map nor ink, yet it belongs to someone here." Lady Penelope gasped. "My locket! I thought I misplaced it." Poirot turned the key in his hand, noting a delicate engraving. "Your locket's clasp, madame." She nodded. "I wear it always. If only I had it now, perhaps I could tell you more." He pocketed the key. "We are gathering fragments, cipher, key, window, compartment, and the missing map itself. But before we chase each clue, I must speak again with your solicitor, Mr. Belford. There is business here beyond dust and ink." Back inside, Poirot paused in the hall. "Inspector, assemble Mr. Whitcomb and Mr. Belford at once. I wish to examine the gardener's ankle and view Mr. Belford's ledger." He smiled benignly. "And, madam, pray insist none depart. This house is sealed until truth emerges." As the household scurried to obey, Poirot surveyed the scene with triumphant calm. The pieces were laid out like a jigsaw puzzle, each waiting to be fitted. And somewhere among these servants and guests lay the mind capable of murder and the determination to claim what the map concealed. With a flick of his moustache, Hercule Poirot prepared to draw them all into his web of psychological inquiry. Chapter 4. The Solicitor's Ledger. With footsteps muffled by the crimson carpet, Hercule Poirot led Inspector Jameson and Lady Penelope toward the panelled study door. "The study yields its secrets slowly, mais sûrement," he murmured, pushing open the oak doors. Inside, the morning light slanted across the desk, illuminating the small sealed packet Poirot had pocketed the previous evening. "Inspector," Poirot said, removing the packet and placing it before him. "We shall examine this correspondence in a moment. But first, the gardener." He gestured toward the corner where Mr. Whitcomb, the household gardener, stood in humble relief, his linen shirt dusted with earth and one ankle wrapped in a dark cloth. Dr. Faraday hovered nearby, supervising the gardener's injured limb. "His sprain is healing," she reported. "He insists he only limped because he slipped on the rose trough outside." Poirot tilted his head. "Slip or conceal?" He ushered Whitcomb forward. "Monsieur Whitcomb, I observed your footprints, wet earth leading to the window. Pray, describe your afternoon's duties." The gardener bowed his head. "Madame asked me to plant the new bulbs in the east border. I worked until dusk, then collected my tools and—" He paused, glancing at the window. "I saw the open pane and, worried Mr. Mapplethorpe had left it ajar in the storm that threatened, I leaned in to close it. That is when I twisted my ankle on the threshold." Poirot's little eyes shone. "And did you enter the study?" Whitcomb shook his head. "No, sir. I reached only the sill. I was too focused on my ankle to press further." "And the key?" Poirot held up the small silver object retrieved from the rose beds. "Could it be yours?" The gardener blinked. "My tools have keys large and iron, not silver nor so fine." Poirot nodded, placing the key in a small dish on the desk. "Merci. Now rest until you have recovered." Whitcomb retreated as doctor. Faraday guided him out, leaving the room silent save for Poirot's soft hum. Turning to Lady Penelope, Poirot extracted the solicitor's ledger from his coat. "Monsieur Belford's entries, madame. How many visits did he make to your study in recent days?" Lady Penelope pursed her lips. "He came twice this week. Once to review my will, and once to advise on the map's provenance paperwork." "2 visits?" Poirot repeated. "And, Inspector? What did you learn of Mr. Belford's ledger last night?" Jameson consulted his notes. He noted a payment for research services to Mr. Mapplethorpe and an unexplained fee to a GRH. Poirot's finger traced the initials. "Colonel Halifax's cipher, yet this packet is addressed to him." He carefully slit the seal and withdrew a single sheet of thick stationery. The Colonel's elegant handwriting formed a formal request: payment for private counsel on the map's rights. The sum was considerable, far beyond legal niceties. Lady Penelope gasped. "Colonel Halifax? But he is merely a distant cousin, hardly a party in my inheritance." "Unless," Poirot said quietly, "the Colonel had reason to fear what the map might reveal about his own affairs." He refolded the letter. "We must speak with Mr. Belford at once." Moments later, Edward Belford, solicitor to the Pendleton family, entered the room. His expression was calm, yet his eyes flickered at the sight of the open ledger. Poirot rose from his place behind the desk. "Monsieur Belford, thank you for joining us. I trust the night's rest did you well?" Belford nodded courteously. "Quite well, Mr. Poirot. I understand the situation is grave." "Indeed. I wish to clarify your ledger entries. You recorded 2 visits this week, one for probate matters and one, unusual, marked research services to Mr. Mapplethorpe." Poirot tilted his head. "Pray explain." Belford cleared his throat. Lady Penelope's family sought to verify the authenticity of the map, whether it was an original from the 17th century or a clever forgery. I commissioned Mr. Mapplethorpe to conduct archival comparisons, hence the fee. "And the fee to G.R.H.? Poirot produced the Colonel's letter. "A substantial retainer for private counsel." Belford glanced at Lady Penelope, then back to Poirot. "Colonel Halifax was named a potential co-beneficiary should the map prove genuine. He wished to ensure his legal standing. Hence he engaged my services under discreet cover." A murmur stirred Lady Penelope. "He never informed me of that." "Discretion, madame," Belford said with a thin smile. "The Colonel insisted upon it." Poirot folded his hands. "Monsieur Belfort, did you deliver this letter personally?" Belford's lips pressed. "I placed it in his quarters this morning." "And did you observe whether the Colonel received it?" Belford hesitated. "I cannot say. He was out inspecting the West Wing's new fixtures." Poirot nodded, turning to the inspector. "Gentlemen's secrets, mesdames et messieurs, all woven into the ledger of concern." He tapped the ledger's binding. "Now, let us consider motive. The Colonel's anxiety, the solicitor's duplicity, the gardener's curious window visit, and the vanished map. Each clue circles an unseen centre." Inspector Jameson scribbled furiously. "What next, sir?" Poirot rose and paced, moustache bristling. "Next, I must revisit Colonel Halifax's quarters. His private chambers may conceal more than legal letters, and, madame, I require access to his personal desk." Lady Penelope inclined her head. "Certainly, Monsieur Poirot. The Colonel's rooms lie on the first floor, opposite my brother's suite." "Excellent," Poirot smiled, steepling his fingers. "Lead on, Inspector. We pursue the Colonel, and with him, perhaps, the truth we so ardently seek." As Poirot, Jameson, and Lady Penelope departed, the study settled into an echoing quiet. The ledger lay open upon the desk, its entries a testament to human ambition and suspicion. And beyond the doors, the corridors of Pendleton Hall bristled with unspoken questions, questions that only Hercule Poirot, with his little grey cells, could hope to answer. Chapter 5. The Colonel's Quarters. The corridor outside Colonel Halifax's chambers was hushed and dimly lit by a solitary wall sconce. Poirot paused at the door, tilting his head to note the polished brass plaque. "Observe, Inspector," he said softly, "that the keyhole shows no sign of tampering." He produced the silver key found in the rose garden and, with a flourish, inserted it into the lock. It turned with a barely audible click. Inside, the room was immaculately arranged, a broad mahogany desk, a tall bookcase filled with military histories, and a large portrait of the colonel in full regalia hung above the fireplace. Poirot stepped over the threshold, eyes sweeping every detail. Messieurs, our colonel is a man of order, yet perhaps there is disorder beneath this veneer. Inspector Jameson ducked beneath the yellow light. Sir, the desk drawer is locked. I doubt the colonel uses that key. Poirot smiled. Then we shall try another. He withdrew the packet addressed to GRH and fitted the small seal's key into the drawer's lock. It turned smoothly, revealing a sheaf of correspondence. He rifled through the letters until he found one bearing Lady Penelope's handwriting, a brief note thanking the colonel for his timely advice on legal matters. But beneath it lay a second envelope, unaddressed and thick with sealed wax. "Ah!" Poirot exclaimed. He broke the seal and extracted a folded parchment, a fragment of the missing map itself, edged with inked lines indicating mountain passes. His moustache quivered. "Mon Dieu, here is a piece of our prize, hidden in the colonel's personal belongings." Lady Penelope gasped. Inspector Jameson frowned. He admitted only legal counsel, yet he possessed part of the map. Poirot nodded gravely. He sought to secure it for himself, perhaps fearing discovery. But why hide only a fragment? There must be more. He placed the fragment onto his palm, examining the fine script. And note the crease. He folded it recently, within our time frame. At that moment, Colonel Halifax entered, his crisp uniform immaculate. He halted, eyes widening at the open drawer. "Monsieur Poirot," he exclaimed, "I left only a note for Lady Penelope." Poirot turned, spreading his arms. "Colonel, bienvenue. Pray explain this." He held up the map fragment. The colonel's proud facade faltered, his jaw tightening. I found it among Mr. Mapplethorpe's files," the colonel stammered. "I intended to return it. Truly. I wished only to examine the cartography." "Examine in secret, non?" Poirot's tone was gentle but firm. "Tell me, Colonel, have you any explanation for the ciphered note found in the study's floor compartment?" The colonel swallowed. No, I saw nothing." He glanced toward Inspector Jameson. "Gentlemen, I assure you I meant no harm." Poirot's little eyes gleamed. "Yet you concealed both map and motive. That is most interesting." He folded the fragment carefully. "Colonel, I shall need your full cooperation. Remain here until I have finished my inquiries." As the colonel sank into a nearby armchair, Poirot stepped back to the desk. "These revelations deepen our intrigue. A fragment here, a ciphered note there, and the whole map still missing. The colonel's actions speak louder than his words." Inspector Jameson made a note. Lady Penelope watched, tension writ across her features, and Poirot, standing amid the colonel's secret hoard, felt the puzzle pieces shift ever closer to the center, where the true motive awaited unveiling. Chapter 6. The First False Lead. The Grand Hall had never felt so tense. Inspector Jameson stood before Colonel Halifax, hand on the colonel's arm, ready to escort him away under suspicion of murder and theft. Lady Penelope watched with horror, her fan trembling, while the assembled staff clustered behind her like a ragged audience. Poirot, however, remained inscrutably calm, moustache quivering with restraint. "Colonel," the inspector announced, You are under arrest on suspicion of murdering Mr. Mapplethorpe and concealing the stolen map." He produced a pair of handcuffs. The colonel's face went pale. "Arrested? For God's sake, Jameson, I am innocent. I found that fragment purely by chance and meant to return it." Poirot held up a slender finger. "Patience, Inspector. We must proceed with caution. The colonel's actions are suspicious, yes, but not conclusive." He stepped between the two men, voice gentle yet firm. "Arrest may come later, once all evidence has been weighed. For now, Colonel, I ask that you remain in this room until I have heard from one more witness." Jameson hesitated, lowering the cuffs. "Very well, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot turned to Lady Penelope. "Madame, please gather Mr. Belford and Dr. Faraday in the library. There is yet one thread that may unravel our case." She inclined her head and hurried away. Left alone with the colonel, Poirot studied him keenly. The colonel's uniform hung with the precision of a soldier, but his eyes betrayed genuine distress. Poirot allowed a moment of silence, as if weighing the colonel's soul. "Colonel," Poirot began softly, "tell me, did you ever see Mr. Mapplethorpe with this ciphered note?" He extracted the parchment from his coat pocket. The colonel's eyes flickered. "No, monsieur. I never saw it." His voice cracked. "I swear, I never intended him harm." Poirot nodded. "Nevertheless, the note was written by him anticipating danger, and you hid a fragment of his map. Why?" The colonel ran a hand through his silver hair. "Because I feared Lady Penelope would destroy it. This map speaks of lands that implicate my family's past, secrets I wished to understand before anyone else could misuse them." Poirot's expression remained impassive. "Secrets can embitter the soul, Colonel. But first we must uncover who silenced Mr. Mapplethorpe and why." At that moment, Lady Penelope returned, followed by Mr. Belford and Dr. Faraday. The library's oak-panelled walls absorbed their hushed footsteps. Poirot placed the parchment and map fragment on a side table. "Dr. Faraday," Poirot addressed the physician, "tell us of the gardener's ailment. You attended to Mr. Whitcomb yesterday?" Dr. Faraday's eyes met Poirot's. "Yes, his ankle was indeed sprained, but the swelling and bruising suggest more than a simple twist. He may have been thrown, deliberately, to feign accident." A murmur rippled through the group. Inspector Jameson frowned. "Thrown? You mean someone pushed him?" Dr. Faraday nodded gravely. "It would explain the force needed to break his twine and the bruising above the ankle." Poirot leaned forward. "So our gardener is not merely a helpless witness, but perhaps a diverted opponent." He turned to Belford. "And you, solicitor? Did you notice any tension between Mr. Belford and Mr. Mapplethorpe on your visit?" Belford swallowed. "Mapplethorpe was anxious about the map's provenance. He feared forgery. I calmed him, but he seemed troubled." Poirot tapped the table. "Troubled enough to write a cipher, hide a note, anticipate danger." He straightened, eyes glittering. "We have one false lead, the colonel's fragment. Yet the crime is not his doing. We must look elsewhere, perhaps among those whose motives are subtler." Lady Penelope's voice quivered. "Monsieur, whom do you suspect now?" Poirot smiled gently. "Not yet, madame, but soon. For now I ask you all to recall every word, every glance, every slip of the tongue. Our culprit has masked intent with distraction. We must remove each veil." As the group dispersed to retrace their interactions, Poirot remained alone, surveying the library's rich volumes as if they too held testimony. The first false lead had been discarded, but the path to truth still lay shrouded in deceit, and Hercule Poirot, ever patient, would press on, little grey cells alight with purpose. Chapter 7. A Faint in the Corridor. The hush of midnight lay heavy over Pendleton Hall when a sharp cry shattered the stillness. Hercule Poirot, roused from his bedchamber by Inspector Jameson's urgent knock, donned his dressing gown and followed the constable down the echoing corridor. "Where is the disturbance?" Poirot inquired, voice calm despite the urgency. Inspector Jameson pointed toward the east wing. "Miss Groves was found unconscious in the corridor outside the library, sir. Housemaid discovered her just moments ago." He led the way past silent portraits whose eyes seemed to follow their passage. At the far end, a small assembled group clustered around a figure crumpled against the wall. Alice Groves lay pale on the marble floor, one hand clutching a scrap of parchment. Dr. Faraday knelt beside her, pressing a cool handkerchief to the girl's forehead. Lady Penelope hovered anxiously, while Mr. Belford stood back, concern etched on his face. Colonel Halifax, freed from his earlier confinement, hovered at the edge, bristling with curiosity. Poirot knelt, inspecting Alice with a practiced eye. "She is merely unconscious, monsieur. A narcotic, perhaps, or sheer shock." He gently eased the scrap of parchment from her grasp and unfolded it. Beneath his little finger appeared a segment of the missing map, its edges jagged and ink-stained. He straightened, holding the fragment aloft. "A piece of the map," he muttered, "but torn. Evidently in haste, someone wished her to possess it." He crouched again to observe the corridor floor. "Notice the stain here?" He pointed to a small smear of dark liquid on the marble. "Not blood, but ink, fresh from a quill pen, and here," he traced a line of footprints in the dust by the skirting board. "Drag marks. She was moved post-collapse." Dr. Faraday pressed a finger to her lips. "I administered a mild sedative after learning she had witnessed something, or so she claimed when I first found her." She rose and met Poirot's gaze. She murmured names in her delirium: Celia, vase, and window. Lady Penelope gasped. "Miss Montague, my cousin Celia. She was in the conservatory, sketching flowers." Inspector Jameson frowned. "She must have seen our culprit, or the murderer disturbed her." Poirot folded the new fragment and placed it carefully in his pocket. "Mes amis, this second incident is no accident. Our culprit seeks to distract and mislead. By involving Miss Groves, they draw suspicion away from themselves, and from the true objective, the complete map." He stood, smoothing his gown. "We must secure Miss Groves and learn what she saw." He turned to Dr. Faraday. "Madame, attend to her sedation level. Keep her under observation here, and permit no one to question her until she awakens." The doctor nodded, guiding Alice, still unconscious, toward a plush settee in the alcove, where two housemaids trembled as they replaced pillows behind her head. Poirot addressed the assembled. "Now, Madame Pendleton, retrieve Miss Montague at once. We require her presence." Lady Penelope hurried away, and in moments returned with Celia Montague, her bohemian robes dusted with soil from the conservatory. Celia's eyes were wide. She curtsied stiffly. "Monsieur Poirot, you wished to see me?" "Indeed, mademoiselle," Poirot replied. "It seems you may have witnessed more than the botanical intricacies of your roses." He indicated the corridor. "Miss Groves found that map fragment in her hand, and you were last to pass this way." Celia's face paled. I returned from the conservatory to check on Alice. I found the corridor locked, but heard a faint whisper. When I unlocked it, I saw Alice draped here and the fragment at her feet. Locked? Poirot's brow arched. Yet the corridor doors are never bolted at night. She shivered. I thought that someone had locked it behind me. I struggled with the latch before I found the key in my pocket. She withdrew a small brass key inscribed with her initials, offering it to Poirot. He examined it. Not your typical conservatory key. Someone placed it on you, ensuring you entered alone. He pocketed the key. And you heard a whisper. Celia hesitated. A man's voice. It said, "Meet me at once, on the West Terrace. Come alone." Then I froze, and before I could call for help, Alice cried out. Poirot nodded slowly, eyes glittering. A trap. Designed to lure a witness away and ensure silence, yet the plan backfired when you both escaped. He turned to Jameson. Secure the terrace and question any staff who might patrol there. The voice belonged to our murderer, whose confidence now betrays them. Inspector Jameson saluted and hurried away. Poirot turned back to Celia. Mademoiselle, where precisely did you find Alice's scrap of map? Celia blinked. On the floor here, monsieur. But later, I saw another fragment on the terrace balustrade. Tiny, drowned by dew. Poirot's moustache quivered. Then the map is being torn apart and distributed, either to mislead or to conceal. We must gather each piece. He turned to Lady Penelope. Madame, send your servants to search the terrace, conservatory and gardens for any parchment, and bring all keys found on your staff or guests. None may be excluded. Lady Penelope bowed. At once, Monsieur Poirot. As the household sprang into action, Poirot surveyed the corridor, its marble stained with ink and edged by the shadows of the hall. 2 pieces of the map were now in his possession, and a third might lie hidden among the roses. The murderer's rash desperation only served to reveal the urgency and the depths to which they would descend. And Hercule Poirot, little grey cells aflame, was determined to outwit them at every turn. Chapter 8. Secrets in the Conservatory. The soft glow of lanterns cast dancing shadows among the ferns and orchids of the conservatory as servants scurried to obey Poirot's orders. Lady Penelope and Inspector Jameson followed Hercule Poirot through the glass doors, their breath visible in the cool air. Every leaf and petal seemed to watch them as they entered the fragrant, humid sanctuary. Poirot raised a gloved hand. Mes amis, search each pot, each windowsill. The map fragments may lie hidden among these blooms. He moved deliberately toward a marble bench beneath a sprawling jasmine vine. Observe the dew on the glass, fresh yet undisturbed in most places. Here, however, he pointed to a small smudge against the pane. Inspector Jameson knelt to examine it. Ink, sir, as if someone pressed a paper against the glass and slid it down. He wiped a corner, revealing faint script, the letters DOS etched in mirror image. Poirot's moustache quivered. Part of a word, perhaps condos or maddocks, but let us not speculate. He beckoned to Lady Penelope. Madame, your cousin's sketchbook. May I see it? Celia Montague, summoned earlier, handed over her leather-bound volume. Poirot leafed through delicate floral studies until he found one page stained with the same blue ink. Notice, Poirot said, pointing, how the petal lines are interrupted by the stain. Our fragment was sketched here before being discarded. He tore out the page, revealing on its reverse a map fragment matching the edges of those recovered earlier. A tiny cross marked a spot in the high atlas, accompanied by the initials R.M. Lady Penelope gasped. R.M. Reginald Mapplethorpe. Indeed, he hid his own marking, knowing someone might follow his trail. Poirot pocketed the fragment. But who sketched it here, Celia? You? Celia shook her head. I never turned to that page. It was blank when I last used it. Poirot raised an eyebrow. Then someone else had your sketchbook and your seal key to hide their work among your drawings. He glanced at the floor. And note these footprints, slender, but not Celia's. They lead toward the massive glass roof hatch. Inspector Jameson approached the hatch's latch. Locked from the outside, but mud on the sill matches the garden path. My theory, Poirot mused, is that our culprit climbed up from the terrace, pinning the fragment here to mislead. Yet the true hiding place of the map is still unknown. He stood, smoothing his cravat. We now have 5 fragments, enough to confirm the map's full design and the location of its treasure. But the thief fears discovery. They will strike again if cornered. Lady Penelope inhaled sharply. What shall we do, Monsieur Poirot? He smiled tightly. We wait, for the next move will come not from the map, but from human frailty, and when it does, we shall be ready. Outside, the moonlight glimmered on the conservatory panes as the servants closed in around the hidden fragments. Within, the seeds of deception had taken root. But soon, Hercule Poirot's little grey cells would harvest the truth. Chapter 9. The Hidden Cipher. The morning sun filtered through the leaded windows of Pendleton Hall's drawing room as Hercule Poirot sat at a small writing table, the ciphered note spread before him. Beside him, Dr. Eleanor Faraday and Mr. Edward Belford watched in respectful silence, while Inspector Jameson stood by the mantel, tapping his notebook. Lady Penelope Pendleton hovered near the fauteuil, anxiety etched in every line of her face. Poirot adjusted his spectacles and traced the looping script with a slender finger. Mes amis, this cipher is not a fanciful exercise. It is a testament to Mr. Mapplethorpe's dread. He tapped the paper. He writes, Seek not only where the mountain lies, but where the sun first strikes its breast. There you shall find the legacy stolen in blood. He looked up. The key is in his choice of words. Sun's first strike. That directs us to the eastern ridge of the High Atlas, but more importantly, it implies someone knew Mr. Mapplethorpe would hide the map fragment there. Inspector Jameson frowned. So our murderer also knows the Atlas and the map's secret destination. Exactament, Poirot agreed. That narrows our circle further. But notice the phrase, stolen in blood. It suggests personal guilt. Someone here believes they wronged the cartographer or profited from his work. He folded the parchment gently. Yet I must confirm my theory. He rose and paced, moustache twitching. Dr. Faraday, you observed Miss Groves and Miss Montague faint under stress. Both were lured by fragments of the map. Our culprit sowed chaos to distract us. But only one person benefited from those diversions while concealing the whole. He paused at the window. Tell me, Doctor, what of the gardener's sprain? He claimed he merely fell, but the bruising you noted, could it have been inflicted by a leather glove or a heavy object? Dr. Faraday shivered. It was not a simple slip. The pattern of bruises suggests someone struck him and forced him away, likely to prevent him from overhearing something. Poirot turned back to Mr. Belford. And you, Monsieur Belford, have you any record of payments or disputes between your clients and Mr. Mapplethorpe, aside from this map commission? Belford hesitated, clearing his throat. Only that Mr. Mapplethorpe once threatened legal action against an unnamed party over intellectual property. He never disclosed the name, but the ledger bears an unrecorded notation, Caution H.P. Poirot's moustache quivered with satisfaction. H.P. Hastings, perhaps? Number more likely, Halifax Penelope. But which? Lady Penelope? Lady Penelope drew in a shaky breath. I received only his professional invoices. Nothing more. Then consider Colonel Halifax, Poirot mused. He admitted to hiding a fragment, but his motive seemed born of curiosity, not malice. And Celia Montague's involvement, her key, her sketchbook, points to orchestrated distraction. He steepled his fingers. No, the true cipher belongs to someone whose initials are hidden in plain sight. He stepped to the mantel and took down a small portrait of Mr. Mapplethorpe. Look closely at his expression, stern, determined. He trusted one person above all. His close friend, Mrs. Lydia Groves. Poirot's gaze moved to the housekeeper, who had entered quietly and stood near the door. Madame Groves, you have been remarkably composed, yet you controlled the silver keys, the servant passages, and you manage this house's secrets. Mrs. Groves inclined her head, face calm but her knuckles white around her handkerchief. I served Mr. Mapplethorpe with utmost respect, Monsieur Poirot. But respect does not preclude ambition, Poirot said gently. You alone had both opportunity and motive. The cipher's reference to blood indicates something more personal than legal counsel or family pride. He paused, letting the silence deepen. Madame, tell me of your relationship with Mr. Mapplethorpe. Her composure faltered for the first time. He confided in me. He feared the map might expose an old scandal, a lost inheritance promised to the Groves family, but usurped by Lady Penelope's ancestors. He vowed to restore what was rightfully mine. Poirot nodded slowly. So you believed the map belonged to you, and when death intervened, you resolved to claim it before anyone else. He turned to Inspector Jameson. Arrest her, if you will, yet do so with discretion. We shall convene the final gathering this evening, where I will reveal every detail to all present. As Jameson moved forward, Mrs. Groves sank to her knees, tears glistening. Lady Penelope covered her mouth in shock, and Belford looked away in grave regret. Poirot folded his hands, moustache bristling with quiet triumph. The little grey cells have uncovered the hidden cipher, but the final reveal, the unmasking of motive and method, belongs to the ceremony of justice. Until then, let no one leave Pendleton Hall. Outside, the drawing-room's heavy doors closed, sealing in the fate of each heart within, and setting the stage for Poirot's ultimate denouement. Chapter 10. The Final Gathering. Late that afternoon, the great drawing-room of Pendleton Hall was arranged for its most solemn assembly. Heavy tapestries muffled the footsteps on the polished oak floor, and the glow of shaded lamps lent the chamber an almost sepulchral hush. At the head of the long mahogany table stood Hercule Poirot, his little grey cells a-twitter with the culmination of each carefully laid clue. Facing him were Lady Penelope and Inspector Jameson. Along the walls sat Colonel Halifax, Mr. Edward Belford, Miss Celia Montague, Dr. Eleanor Faraday, Mr. Thomas Aldridge, Mrs. Lydia Groves, and the trembling housemaid, Alice Groves. Poirot cleared his throat softly. Mesdames et messieurs, I thank you for obeying my request to assemble here. We are at the threshold of truth. He inclined his head toward Inspector Jameson. Inspector, kindly secure the doors and admit no one else. Jameson rose, giving a curt nod as two constables stationed themselves at the double doors. Poirot turned back to the circle. Earlier this day, I disclosed that Madame Groves held in her possession motives both ancient and blood-deep. Yet I did not wish merely to accuse. I wished to demonstrate. He lifted a folded parchment. Let us review the course of our inquiry. He began with the locked study, recounting the locked door paradox and the scrambled footprints that led to the window. A hush fell as he described the gardener's coerced fall and the key that fit both a locket and a drawer. He spoke of Colonel Halifax's fragment, of Celia's misused sketchbook, of Alice's dramatic faint, and of the ciphered warning that pointed eastward. With each recap, Poirot held up the physical fragments: ink-stained parchment, blue ink blot, sketchbook page, placing them before the group like pieces of a moral jigsaw. As he spoke, Mrs. Groves sat rigidly, her gloved hands clasped in her lap. Lady Penelope's eyes never left her, suspicion and sorrow waging battle in her gaze. Belford shifted uncomfortably, while the Colonel's uniformed shoulders tightened. Poirot paused before Mrs. Groves. Madame, you told us that the map's provenance promised restitution for your family's lost legacy. You believed the Pendleton ancestors had usurped your inheritance, did you not? Her voice trembled, but she met his eyes. I did. Mon Dieu, Poirot exclaimed softly. You betrayed your duty as housekeeper for vengeance. You removed fragments of the map one by one, sowing confusion among the guests. You lured Celia with a forged invitation, drugged Alice to mimic a fall, and concealed the gardener to silence him. Each act was calculated, yet you underestimated Monsieur Mapplethorpe's resolve to protect his secret. He turned to the console behind him and pressed a small lever. A hidden panel slid open, revealing the missing map in its entirety, rolled and tucked behind the bookshelf. Here lies the whole map, Madame Groves, Poirot continued. You hid it here, after Mr. Mapplethorpe's murder, confident no one would discover so well hidden a treasure. He held the map aloft. Yet your downfall was pride. The ciphered note you left in the study, the repeated fragments you scattered to distract rather than conceal, and the singular key you pressed into the lock of your own locket. A tremor passed through Mrs. Groves. She slumped forward. Yes, I confess it all. He promised my family its rightful share, then refused to honor me. I thought, if I claimed the map, I could restore our name. Poirot's voice gentled. Je comprends, mais justice must prevail. You took a life for a parchment, yet death cannot repair old wounds. He turned to Inspector Jameson. Arrest her, Inspector. Jameson stepped forward and produced handcuffs. Gently, he clasped them around Mrs. Groves's wrists. She offered no resistance. Her head bowed. Poirot faced the remaining assembly. Thus ends our mystery. Each suspect's secret was bait. Only the true motive endured. And now justice for Reginald Mapplethorpe has been served. He nodded gravely. Our little grey cells have triumphed. Lady Penelope exhaled, tears shining in her eyes. Poirot paused, adjusting his waistcoat. And now, Madame, may I suggest you present the map to the Geographical Society as your family's rightful discovery, and let history judge your ancestors' deeds more kindly than hearts weighed by resentment. With that, the gathering dispersed into relieved whispers, leaving Poirot alone by the unrolled map, his expression one of serene satisfaction, the echoes of his triumph lingering in the silent grandeur of Pendleton Hall. Chapter 11. Justice Restored. A week had passed since the unveiling in the drawing-room, and Pendleton Hall was once again stirred by bustle rather than dread. Early morning light filtered through the tall windows as Lady Penelope Pendleton and Colonel Halifax walked together in the rose garden, the map's fate settled by the Geographical Society's verdict. Between them the air was lighter, yet tinged with the memory of tragedy. Inside the hall, Hercule Poirot sat comfortably in his favourite armchair, sipping a cup of tea as Inspector Jameson delivered his final report. "The trial was swift, monsieur," the inspector said, settling the papers on a side table. Madame Groves confessed fully and expressed genuine remorse. The judge acknowledged her service to the family but could not excuse the crime. She has been sentenced to transportation, though her conduct and cooperation earned a more lenient term. Poirot inclined his head. "Justice, n'est-ce pas, Inspector? A balance between punishment and compassion." He folded his hands neatly. "And the map itself, how fares it?" Jameson smiled. "Lady Penelope presented it to the Society yesterday. The scholars were enchanted by its accuracy and historical significance. They intend to mount a public exhibition, crediting both Mr. Mapplethorpe's genius and your guidance, monsieur." Poirot's eyes twinkled behind his spectacles. "Ah, the ultimate vindication of the little grey cells." He paused, then gestured toward the window. "But tell me, Inspector, how fare our other friends in this tangled web?" "The Colonel has offered to underwrite a memorial fund for botanical research in memory of Miss Groves," Jameson reported. "Celia Montague has already contributed sketches to the Society's catalogue. Dr. Faraday remains at Pendleton Hall as the family physician, her reputation enhanced by her discretion. And Mr. Belford, well, he continues his practice, though with markedly fewer secret engagements." Lady Penelope joined them, her expression serene. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. Without your insight, I would have lost everything, my brother, my home, and perhaps my very name." She paused, glancing toward the portrait of Reginald Mapplethorpe in the hall. "Yet now I feel his legacy is secure." Poirot rose, smoothing his suit. "Madam, true order is restored when truth is known. You have honoured your duty to Mr. Mapplethorpe and your family, and that is the greatest justice of all." He moved to stand beneath the map, now mounted and framed in the entrance hall, and studied it thoughtfully. "Observe, madame, how each contour line tells a story, much like those who walked these corridors. The human heart is as intricate as any mountain pass." Lady Penelope smiled. "You always see beyond the surface, monsieur." Poirot's moustache quivered with a soft laugh. "That, madame, is my métier." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small silver key, the locket key once retrieved from the rosebeds. "One final detail. This key opens the locket you gave me as a token of gratitude." He handed it to her. "Keep it as a reminder that even the smallest clue can unlock the greatest secrets." As Lady Penelope clasped the key to her heart, Colonel Halifax approached, hat in hand. "Monsieur Poirot, will you honour us with one last dinner before you depart?" Poirot considered, then bowed. "With pleasure, Colonel. But only if the conversation remains free of maps and mysteries." Laughter rippled through the hall, the first genuine rejoinder in many days. Outside, the roses swayed in the gentle breeze, sunlight dancing on their petals. And within Pendleton Hall, Hercule Poirot's little grey cells rested at last, satisfied that justice had been served, and that in the end, order and compassion had prevailed. Chapter 12. The Belgic Farewell. The torches in the great hall of Pendleton Hall flickered as the company gathered for the final dinner in honor of Hercule Poirot. The long table, set with gleaming silver and crystal, bore the marks of a celebration tempered by solemn remembrance. A wreath of white roses, the same variety that had shone in the conservatory, lay upon a cushion at the head of the table, a tribute to Reginald Mapplethorpe's memory. Poirot sat in the place of honor, his posture as impeccable as ever. Across from him, Lady Penelope raised her glass of claret. "To Monsieur Poirot," she proclaimed softly, "whose little grey cells have guided us through peril and restored harmony to our home." Glasses tinkled in assent, and Colonel Halifax offered a respectful bow. The lamps gleamed on Poirot's polished shoes as he took his sip. "Madame, Colonel, mes amis," he replied, voice warm, "I am deeply touched. But let us not forget that order and justice are duties we perform in service to others. Without your cooperation and candour, my work would have been in vain." A murmur of agreement passed around the table. Dr. Faraday smiled, recalling the tension of the week. "Order indeed," she said. "I confess I feared discovery at every turn, but now I see that truth carries its own grace." Poirot inclined his moustache. "Grace and gravity, madam, both are necessary. Forgive me, but a dinner free of enigmas demands a new topic. Colonel Halifax, might you share your Botanical Fund's plans?" The colonel brightened. "Certainly. We intend to endow a scholarship for young botanists to study North African flora, particularly the rose species cultivated here. It will honor both Miss Groves, who loved these plants, and the legacy of Mr. Mapplethorpe." Celia Montague, seated beside him, reached for a slice of poached salmon. "And I shall contribute sketches to the fund's publications, perhaps an illustrated guide to Pendleton Hall's garden." Inspector Jameson laughed. "I never thought I'd see the day when a murder investigation led to a botanical scholarship. But stranger things, they say, have happened." Poirot tapped his fork lightly. "Life is full of paradoxes, Inspector. Now, Lady Penelope, how fare the Hall's affairs?" Lady Penelope smiled, eyes misty. "The household has grown closer through adversity. We have reviewed our protocols, doubling security for valuable items and ensuring all guests' correspondence is noted. And my brother Gerald has proposed opening our archives to the public once a year, so that no secrets remain hidden in dusty chests." At the mention of Lord Gerald, the young man looked up from his plate. "I realized that transparency breeds trust. If history is shared, there is less room for grievance or resentment." Poirot nodded approvingly. "Wisdom earned through trial, Lord Pendleton. Now, mes amis, we must also plan my departure." He tapped the rim of his glass. "I shall leave Pendleton Hall at dawn. My next journey calls me to the continent, where new mysteries await." Lady Penelope reached across the table, placing a hand on Poirot's. "You must return soon, Monsieur Poirot. Your presence has become indispensable." Poirot's moustache bristled with delight. "Madame, you honor me. But remember, wherever human nature stirs, there I shall follow, little grey cells always at the ready." A gentle laughter rippled through the company. The final course was served, a delicate tart of pears and almonds, its fragrance mingling with the roses at the table's centre. As they dined, conversations drifted from gardens to travels, from scholarly pursuits to the simple joys of family restored. When the meal concluded, Poirot rose and addressed the assembled. "Madame, Colonel, Inspector, and dear friends, all I ask is that you carry forward the spirit of this gathering, honesty, compassion, and an unwavering quest for truth. With those virtues, Pendleton Hall will stand ever bright." He bowed gracefully. Lady Penelope curtsied in return. Outside the windows, the moon had risen, casting silver light upon the gardens where fragments of mystery had once been strewn. Now only the gentle rustle of leaves remained. In the foyer, as the guests bid him good night, Colonel Halifax clasped Poirot's hand. "May your travels be safe, mon ami, and may we meet again." Poirot smiled, draping his cloak over his shoulders. "Assuredly, Colonel, for the world is a tapestry of enigmas, and I, ever the humble seeker, shall follow its threads wherever they lead." With that, he stepped into the cool night air, silhouette framed by the grand doors of Pendleton Hall. Inside, the echoes of laughter and gratitude lingered, and as the clock chimed the midnight hour, Hercule Poirot, little grey cells alight with anticipation, set forth on the next chapter of his journey, leaving behind a home restored and hearts forever changed. Chapter 13. Departure at Dawn. The first pale light of dawn crept through the tall sash windows as Pendleton Hall lay wrapped in a gentle hush. In the courtyard, the carriage waited, its polished panels gleaming with dew. Hercule Poirot, clad in his travelling cloak and perfectly starched cravat, stood upon the stone steps of the entrance, watched by Lady Penelope, Colonel Halifax, and Inspector Jameson. Lady Penelope approached, her silk scarf fluttering in the morning breeze. "Monsieur Poirot, you depart at such an early hour." Her voice held quiet gratitude. "Have you everything you require?" Poirot offered a small bow. "Madame, all is in order. I shall carry with me only fond memories, and the satisfaction of a case resolved." He paused, glancing back at the hall's facade. Yet, places such as this, steeped in history and hidden truths, linger long in one's thoughts. Colonel Halifax stepped forward, handing Poirot a small parcel. "A token of our appreciation, a volume of botanical sketches by Miss Montague. May it remind you of Pendleton's roses." Poirot accepted the gift with a gracious nod. "Merci, Colonel. I shall treasure it." He slipped it into his coat pocket alongside the sketchbook page that had proved so vital in our inquiries. Inspector Jameson offered his hand next. "Safe travels, monsieur. I look forward to our next collaboration." Poirot's moustache quivered. "As do I, Inspector. Wherever human folly stirs, there you shall find me, and you." He tapped his temple lightly. "Little grey cells are ever vigilant." Lady Penelope stepped closer, extending a delicate hand. "And here, Monsieur Poirot, is something more personal." She pressed a small silver key into his palm, the locket key he had returned, "to remind you that even the smallest clue can unlock great mysteries." Poirot's eyes glittered. "Madame, your thoughtfulness humbles me." He tucked the key into his waistcoat pocket. "Until we meet again." With the formal farewells complete, Poirot descended into the carriage. As the door closed softly behind him, he turned to offer a final wave. Lady Penelope pressed her hand to her heart. Colonel Halifax raised his hat. Inspector Jameson stood at attention. The horses trotted forward, their hooves echoing against the cobblestones. Poirot leaned back, gazing through the window at the grand proportions of Pendleton Hall receding into the mist. Just as the trees swallowed the last of the courtyard lanterns, his keen eyes caught a figure in the archway. Miss Celia Montague, wrapped in a shawl, clutching a slim envelope. He pressed his finger to his lips in a gentle salute before the carriage lurched onward. What message did Celia hold? Was it a new fragment, another cipher, or simply a farewell note. In that fleeting moment, Poirot's mind whirled with possibilities, proof that a detective's work is never truly done. And as the road stretched ahead beneath the pale morning sky, Hercule Poirot's little grey cells stirred once more, ready for the next enigma that awaited him beyond the dawn. Chapter 14. An Unexpected Message. The carriage rolled steadily along the dew-glazed lane, the dawn's hush broken only by the rhythmic clip-clop of hooves. Inside, Hercule Poirot sat upright, cravat pristine, and eyes fixed upon the misted window-pane. He allowed himself a moment to savour the residual warmth of Pendleton Hall, the echoes of laughter, the scent of roses, and the satisfactions of justice served. Then, from the folds of his travelling cloak, he drew the slim envelope that Celia Montague had pressed into his hand as the carriage departed. The seal bore her delicate monogram, inked in the same blue hue found in her conservatory sketches. With a flick of his impeccably manicured fingernail, Poirot broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet within. His little grey cells quickened as he read. Monsieur Poirot, I apologize for this intrusion upon your departure, but I discovered something in the library that I cannot bear to hide. In one of the volumes on North African cartography, I found a folded page, one that did not belong there. I fear it may be another fragment of Mr. Mapplethorpe's map. I have left it with Mr. Aldridge for you to retrieve upon your next visit. Please forgive my presumption. I only wish to preserve the truth. Yours respectfully, Celia Montague. Poirot's moustache twitched. He refolded the note with utmost care and placed it beside the botanical sketches. Mon Dieu, he murmured to himself. Even as I depart, the threads of this case tug insistently. He called the coachman's attention. Please halt at the next stable, monsieur. The carriage slowed, and soon the driver guided the horses to a standstill beneath an ancient oak. Poirot stepped down, careful not to disturb the envelope or sketches, and handed them to the coachman. Kindly deliver these to Mr. Aldridge at Pendleton Hall. On my behalf, instruct him to keep them safe until my return. The coachman inclined his head, mystery glittering in his eyes. At once, sir. He tucked the items within a leather pouch and remounted, ready to retrace the path back to the hall. Poirot returned to his seat, his posture composed yet energized. Remarkable, he whispered. Miss Montague persistently devoted to the cause of truth. Yet why conceal this fragment with the butler rather than present it herself? He tapped his temple. A new puzzle within the old. The carriage resumed its journey, leaves whispering overhead. Beyond the oak, the spired rooftops of Pendleton Hall already faded into the silver mist. With each turning wheel, Poirot reflected on human nature's ceaseless propensity for secret-keeping, even when the greatest mystery seemed resolved. Clutching Celia's note to his chest, he settled back and closed his eyes, little grey cells alight. For a detective such as he, every ending was but a pause before the next question. And at that moment, somewhere in the corridors of Pendleton Hall, another fragment waited, ready to reveal a truth yet unseen. Chapter 15. Whispers in the Servants' Quarters. Night had fallen once more over Pendleton Hall, and the lantern-lit corridors echoed with the softest of footfalls. Hercule Poirot, having dismissed the coach at the stables, returned to the household in the guise of a late guest, determined to investigate the fragment entrusted to Mr. Aldridge. His velvet-lined boots made no sound on the rugs as he approached the butler's pantry near the west wing. Inside, Mr. Thomas Aldridge stood by the polished oak sideboard, the fragment folded in waxed paper upon the marble counter. He rose, stiff with deference. Monsieur Poirot, I feared you might return. Miss Montague delivered this some hours ago. Poirot inclined his head, gloved fingers reaching for the parcel. Vous êtes très aimable. May I? He unfolded the waxed paper, revealing a ragged edge of parchment bearing part of the map's southern border, complete with a second ciphered symbol, a tiny sun rising above a mountain peak. The ink was smudged, as though applied hastily by trembling hands. "Observe, Aldridge," Poirot murmured. "This cipher differs from Mr. Mapplethorpe's original note. The symbol here, an emblem of dawn, echoes the clue we deciphered in the drawing room, where the sun first strikes its breast. Yet this version suggests a second hiding place." He tapped the paper. "Someone is guiding us deliberately, and yet clandestinely." Aldridge's eyebrows lifted. "Do you suspect Miss Montague of mischief, monsieur?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Not mischief, mon ami, but caution. She fears revealing too much in daylight. Yet this fragment contains the final coordinates we require. I must compare it with the others at once." He pocketed the fragment and stepped into the hallway. Aldridge followed. "Monsieur Poirot, might I accompany you? I have long admired your methods." "Bien sûr," Poirot replied. "Your knowledge of this household's secrets may prove invaluable." Together, they traversed the corridor toward the library, passing the closed door of the servants' hall where lower-ranked staff whispered behind frosted glass. Poirot paused. "Listen, Thomas. Do you hear them?" A faint murmur drifted through the wood. Poirot pressed his ear to the door, his little grey cells alert. Voices, soft, anxious, enter. He opened the door to reveal Mrs. Lydia Groves's former assistant, Mary Collins, pale and agitated, speaking in hushed tones to the scullery maid, Jane. At the sight of Poirot, Mary startled. "Monsieur, we did not know you were here." Poirot smiled gently. "I wished to hear the unguarded truth. Pray continue." He glanced to Aldridge. "Withdraw, my friend. We may need your counsel later." The butler nodded and slipped away. Mary swallowed, hands twisting her apron. "We were discussing the master's legacy, sir. My lady allowed us leave early since the hall work was light." Jane nodded. "We spoke of rumours, that other fragments exist, hidden by Lady Penelope herself." Poirot's eyes glittered. "Lady Penelope? And where did you hear such talk?" Mary glanced at Jane, then back to Poirot. "From the groundskeeper. He swore he saw Lady Penelope in the rose garden after dusk, rifling through the hedge. He thought she searched for something." Jane added softly, "Miss Montague saw her too, when she fetched keys for you." Poirot folded his hands behind his back. "Intriguing. The lady's concern for order is well known, but might she guard more than roses?" He turned to Jane. "Do you trust the groundskeeper's word?" Jane hesitated. "He's loyal, monsieur, but old and prone to shadows." Poirot inclined his head. "Nevertheless, we must investigate. Mary, Jane, thank you. Keep this between yourselves." He stepped back, closing the door. "Ah, Thomas, it seems our circle widens once again." In the hush of the servants' corridor, Poirot pressed the fragment to his lips. Dawn's clue awaited its resolution, but now suspicion touched even Lady Penelope's motives. And as the grandfather clock tolled midnight, Hercule Poirot resolved to follow these new whispers, little grey cells alight, ever nearer to the heart of truth. Chapter 16. Midnight in the Rose Garden. Under a sliver of moonlight, Pendleton Hall's rose garden lay in silver and shadow. Poirot, guided by Mr. Aldridge's quiet steps, paused at the wrought-iron gate. The groundskeeper claimed Madame Pendleton searched here, Poirot whispered, gloved hand resting on the gate's curl. Let us see what he observed. Aldridge nodded, lantern in hand. Together they crept along the gravel path, past beds of white roses still trembling with dew. Poirot's little black eyes darted to every footprint, human but faint and irregular, heels slipping where the gravel met earth. Notice, Poirot murmured, pointing to a series of soft indentations leading to the hedge. Someone knelt here, brushing aside foliage. He crouched, hands parting glossy leaves to reveal a small leather pouch. Aldridge retrieved it, handing it to Poirot, whose moustache quivered in anticipation. Inside lay a final fragment of the map, its edges intact and bearing the completed cipher symbol. A rising sun over the highest peak. Poirot held it aloft. At last, the whole message, at dawn's first light on the eastern ridge, beneath the oldest rose, there lies the treasure. He slipped the parchment into his pocket. But why hide this among the roses? A final misdirection, or perhaps trust only the lady of the house with this secret? A rustle startled them. Poirot and Aldridge turned toward the hedge, lantern beam catching the silhouette of Lady Penelope herself, gloved hands pressed together in anxious composure. "Madame," Poirot called softly, "you honor our search." She stepped forward, breath shallow in the night air. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, voice wavering, "I came to ensure no further fragments were lost. When I learned of Miss Montague's fragment here, I feared the pieces would fall into unworthy hands. I moved this last piece to protect it." Poirot regarded her serenely. "Protection and concealment are close cousins, madame. Yet it is through concealment that we find the truth." He extended the lantern so she could see the pouch empty. "Now we have all fragments, but one question remains. Why preserve the cipher rather than destroy it?" Lady Penelope's shoulders slumped. I hoped to guide you, monsieur, to ensure the map's legacy was honored by your wisdom, not torn apart by greed." She lowered her gaze. "Forgive my fears." Poirot smiled gently, pocketing the pouch. "Fear is a natural custodian of secrets, madame. But tonight, distrust and devotion met in the moonlight, and both led us here." He straightened, offering her a gloved hand. "Come, let us return. Dawn approaches, and with it, our final reckoning." As they retraced their steps under the silver caress of moonlight, Poirot's little grey cells warmed with the promise of closure. The fragments were united, motives laid bare, and yet the soul of Pendleton Hall, the human heart, remained ever mysterious, guiding him toward the last unveiling. Chapter 17. Dawn's True Reveal. The first rosy light of dawn crested the eastern horizon as Poirot, Lady Penelope, Colonel Halifax, and Inspector Jameson ascended the gentle slope of Pendleton's estate grounds. The morning air was crisp, and the dew-laden grass glistened beneath their careful footsteps. At the summit stood the oldest rose bush in the garden, a venerable specimen, its gnarled trunk wound thickly with blossoms. Poirot paused, surveying the scene with poignant satisfaction. "Here, mes amis, Mr. Mapplethorpe's cipher leads us. Beneath the oldest rose, there lies the treasure." He knelt, gently parting the soil around the roots. With Lady Penelope's assistance, he uncovered a small iron box, its surface mottled by time, yet locked by a simple clasp. Colonel Halifax produced a slender key, one of the ancient garden tools, while Poirot offered the silver key from his waistcoat. The two keys turned in unison, releasing the clasp with a soft click. Inside, they found a folded parchment, Mapplethorpe's final testimony detailing the precise route through the High Atlas to the hidden trove of antique coins and ancestral documents once lost to the Groves family. Alongside it lay an ornately bound journal, the cartographer's personal reflections on legacy, duty, and the fragile line between ownership and stewardship. Lady Penelope took the parchment with trembling hands. "He wished this be found only when worthy hearts united," she whispered. Tears glistened as she read his words, a call to justice tempered by compassion, urging her to share the discovery with both the Geographical Society and the rightful heirs, the Groves lineage and the Pendleton archives alike. Inspector Jameson gave a low whistle. Her treasure indeed, but nobler still the spirit in which he bequeathed it. Poirot rose, moustache quivering. The true treasure is not the coins or the documents, but the reconciliation of families once divided by greed. He smiled at Mrs. Groves, now freed from accusation by Poirot's final exoneration of her fears. "Madame, your role in this drama was born of loyalty, misguided, yet rooted in love for your family. Let this be the dawn of a new beginning." As the sun rose fully, its rays painting the rose petals gold, Lady Penelope extended the journal to Colonel Halifax. "Let us preserve this together," she said, "for history's sake, and for the unity Mr. Mapplethorpe desired." The Colonel nodded. "Agreed. We shall establish a joint trust to manage these findings." Poirot stepped back, his gaze lingering on the ancient rose. "Mes amis, our little grey cells have guided us from puzzle to harmony. This garden, these roses, and this treasure remind us that truth, when unearthed with compassion, restores what was lost." They stood in silent homage as dawn's warmth embraced them, and in that fleeting moment, beneath the oldest rose, the mystery found its gentle resolution, uniting past wrongs with present virtue. With hearts reconciled and secrets laid to rest, Pendleton Hall awoke anew, its legacy enriched by both the beauty of its gardens and the enduring grace of human kindness. Chapter 18. The Echo of Little Grey Cells. The morning sun had climbed higher by the time Pendleton Hall's gates closed behind Hercule Poirot's carriage. From the window of his compartment aboard the express train, he watched the familiar silhouette of the estate recede into a tapestry of green and gold. In his lap lay the leather-bound journal of Reginald Mapplethorpe, a testament not only to geographic discovery, but to the quiet courage of those who seek justice. Poirot reflected on the case with characteristic precision. A murdered cartographer, a missing map, fragments scattered like breadcrumbs through rose gardens, servants' quarters, and locked rooms, all woven together by motives as varied as the human heart. Yet in uniting those shards, he had uncovered something greater, the binding force of compassion over vengeance, the redemption that follows confession, and the restoration of dignity for all involved. He thought of Mrs. Lydia Groves, whose love for her family had driven her to extremes. In her final confession, she had spoken not of malice, but of wounded loyalty, and in her sentencing, the court had tempered justice with mercy. Somewhere between Pendleton's archives and the transport ship that would carry her to a new life, she carried the knowledge that truth, when revealed, can set even the most burdened soul free. A station master tapped gently on the carriage door. "Monsieur Poirot, we will arrive in London shortly." Poirot folded the journal carefully and tucked it into his valise. He offered the stationmaster a small nod, his silk cravat still immaculate. As the train rattled into the terminus, Poirot's thoughts turned to those he left behind. Lady Penelope, renewed in her faith in honesty. Colonel Halifax, his botanical fund flourishing as a living memorial. Celia Montague, whose touch of artistry had revealed more than petals could ever show. And Inspector Jameson, ever ready to follow the clues that danced before him. Each had contributed a piece to the puzzle, some knowingly, some unknowingly, and each had grown through the trial. Stepping onto the platform, Poirot adjusted his bowler hat and inhaled the familiar London air tinged with coal smoke and possibility. His coach waited to carry him to Baker Street, where he would return to the elegant calm of 221B, and perhaps to another case knocking at the door. Yet before he departed, he paused to open the journal once more. Within its pages lay Mapplethorpe's final reflections, his gratitude for those who honoured his work, his hope that the map would serve not as a weapon of contention, but as an instrument of unity, and his belief that every discovery carries an obligation to steward it with integrity. Poirot read the closing lines aloud, voice soft yet confident. May this work endure beyond my days, guiding those who follow not only across distant lands, but through the terrain of human conscience. For the greatest exploration is the journey into the hearts of others. He closed the journal and placed it gently in his carriage. As he settled into his seat, Poirot allowed himself a rare smile, one that spoke of satisfaction, of duty fulfilled, and of the endless horizon of mysteries yet to come. With the rhythmic clatter of wheels beneath him, Hercule Poirot, little grey cells ever vigilant, journeyed onward, knowing that wherever secrets lie in wait, he will be there to shed the light of justice and compassion upon them. And in that unwavering dedication, the legacy of the mystery of the missing map lived on, echoing in every heart that dares to seek the truth.